Okay, hello again. I had a couple people ask me about things I was doing in my first person stealth project here. Specifically the dynamic music and the X-ray camera that I had going on. So I thought I would just do like a quick video about like what I was doing in those things and how exactly they work. Just because people were wondering how they work, and I wrote like a small comment, but that didn't really go into depth explaining it. So, I'll put timestamps as to where these things start, so you don't have to listen to me flim flam. Uh, but first, I want to cover the dynamic music. So let me just show you again how it works. What I was doing with this is I would have music playing in the background of the game, obviously. Now, as stuff happens in the game, say you complete an objective or a guard spots you or whatever, the music starts to get a bit more intense. It starts to rise in state. Now, this depends on how many music tracks you want to have, how many levels you want to have in your game. Essentially, this track that I have is 5 different states, so I go through these 5 different steps. And I do have a method that'll switch it. I have some other things going on here, but for now I'm just going to show you like a simple version of what I made, not with everything else I have going on currently. So the way this works is it uses an audio mixer. So first you want to go to Window and Audio Mixer, just to create an audio mixer, and you can see I have a couple here already. Next to mixers, hit plus. That'll make a new audio mixer. Let's call this one Video Mixer, just because I'm making it within a video. So as you can see by my main mixer here, I have music that comes through my music mixer, and I have sound effects that come through my sound effects mixer, and then my main mixer, I can edit them as I see fit. The way my music mixer is set up is it has audio coming in through these different groups. Each of these groups controls a specific audio track, and as I switch through these snapshots, which sort of are basically a snapshot of the current state of my mixer, then it will solo one and mute the others. That's basically what I'm doing. So let's see how you set that up. So going back to the mixer menu, create another mixer. This is going to be a child of the video mixer, so we'll just call it child mixer. Why not? And then we'll simply drag it under video mixer. It's going to ask you to choose the output of this mixer. You want it to output through, for now, I'm just going to set it to output through the master. But if this had different groups on it, like say if I went here and put a different group on it, then I could instead output through that specific group, and then I would be able to modify the volume and other pieces of the audio separately. But for now, it's just going to come through the master, so don't worry about that right now. You can, of course, experiment with this. I'll put a video in the video link in the description of the actual Unity tutorial on this, just so you don't have to listen to some nervous chatty guy. So for this sample, I'm only going to add 4 different steps in my tracks. So to do that, I would create 4 different groups. So with my child mixer selected, I'm going to just create some more groups. You can name these whatever you want, but I'm just going to name them 0 to 3 just so you can see them in the sample. When you're creating them, careful not to have one like selected, otherwise it'll create it as a child, I'm sorry. So go back to the master one, select that, create your next one. Unless you want it to be a child of it for whatever reason, it's up to you. You do your thing. So now I have 4 groups created here. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to create my snapshots. This is more, again, setup of the audio mixer itself, and then I'm going to start putting in the actual audio clips, and you'll see how those will work outputting into these groups here. So for the first snapshot, what I want only the audio from 0 group playing. So I'm going to mute everything else. And then I will create a new snapshot. And I'll call this snapshot 0 because it's where 0 is the only thing playing. You can see this little star up here. That indicates what the starting snapshot is. Because 0 is going to be my comm music, I want this to be the starting snapshot. And now I can just duplicate this, rename it to snapshot 1. And there we go, that's snapshot 1. So snapshot 0, snapshot 1. And then I just keep doing this and creating new snapshots for each step in my music, basically. Again, this depends on how many music tracks your singular track is split up into. Of course, for dynamic music, you're going to need, music. And depending on how you produce that, where you get it from or whatever, it's going to have its own different set of stages or whatever in it. Some of them might even have like a layer that's drums and a layer of the music and some other instruments going. And you can do something similar to manipulate those if you want to say, oh, you just got spotted by a guard, so now there's some rock and roll playing in the background, the guitar solos playing loud or whatever, or the drums get a bit more dramatic, they get more intense. But as you can see by these snapshots, they're all only one is highlighted, only one is playing at normal volume, the rest are completely muted. Master volume controls the entire volume, just so you're aware. Okay, so that is the setup for the mixer right now. Now I'm going to create an empty object. I'm going to create it as a child of my game controller object, just to keep things organized. You can see here I have a sample of it already. Actually, let me delete this one and create a new one so you can see what I'm doing. So create a new one, and I'll call it, let's call it video music holder, because I'm creating a music holder in a video. So the way this is going to work is this is what's going to hold all of our tracks. It's going to have a bunch of audio clips. Those are going to output to different groups, and then that will, as I'm manipulating the groups, it'll manipulate the audio tracks. So adding onto here, we go to add component and we add audio source. Now with your audio source added, you widen it so you can actually see what you're doing. First off, you want to make sure it'll play on awake and it'll loop. Essentially every track is playing at the same time. You're just muting and raising the volume on certain ones at a time. The output for this first one, this is going to be our first track, just to keep things organized. The output for this first one, it's going to be under our child mixer. Recall, we made a child mixer. And it's going to be under the group called 0. You can see from my other ones, I have like certain stages like calm, tense, danger, action, or high action. But for now, our 0 track is going to be coming out of 0. So when we're on snapshot 0, this will be the only track that is playing. It's going to loop, obviously. Your music is going to be looping. You don't want it to just suddenly stop. The audio clip just depends on what clip of your audio you want to use. Now I'll put a link in the description again of where I got my music from. But for now, I'm just going to load that in. So I've just picked this particular loop. It'll output to 0. It'll play on awake, and the music's going to loop. So basically you want to just duplicate this component. So you click on this little, you can right click or you can click on the gear. You go to copy component. You click on the gear and then paste component as new. Once you've pasted the component as a new one, it'll basically duplicate it. So you keep play on awake, you keep it looping, but now you change the output of it. So this one's going to go to 1 instead. Double click on that, and then you put the next part of your music track. And then once again, you go just paste as new. This one's going to output to 2. And it's going to take the next part of the track. And lastly, because my track only has 4 parts, paste as new. Output to 3. And last part of the loop. So you can actually play with this right now if you wanted to. If you just start playing the game, you can hear the music playing already. You can see here specifically it's only playing track 0. If I go to edit in play mode, this allows me to play with the snapshots and stuff while it's in play mode. If I say go to snapshot 1, you can hear the music changing now because it's a different track playing through that particular source. Here, let me go back to my video music holder. This is playing that particular loop through that particular snapshot. If I go to the next one, it's playing different music. And if I go to the next one, it's playing different music. So that's if you want to edit it while you're in play mode, but to do it programmatically, you need to use the transition to function. So to show you the script that I have written for that and how it works, let me add my dynamic music control. Before I input the values within the inspector, let me show you what the script itself is actually doing. What I'm doing first is I'm creating an array of snapshots. The number that will be in your array will depend on how many stages you want in your music, and that's up to you entirely, however you want to set that. Next, I have a selection index. This is going to be the number that says like what particular track I should go to. And I have a transition speed. This is how quickly in seconds it'll change to that particular track. And then I have an enumerator called states. Enumerators, the way that works is essentially imagine it as well, for this one, just imagine it as an array. There's more detail into it, but really what I'm doing with this enumerator right here is I'm essentially saying that when I say COM, what I mean is 0. And that's going to be useful when I'm saying go to this particular index. So I can say go to the danger music, and it knows, okay, go to 2 in the array. So there's other things going on here I wanted to do some dynamic music changing. I'm not going to go into that just yet unless people want to see it. The main thing is what I'm doing in my update method. Let me zoom in again just so you can get a real good view of that. Basically, when you change the selection index, which is changed by a drop down in the inspector, and you can do this however you want. You can put whatever method you wanted to change it. First, what I would do is I say the current state is equal to the selection index, and then this is the method here that's really doing everything. This is the important one. This is what you want to see. This is the snapshot that I want to transition to. So I call that snapshot and I call the transition to method. The transition to method takes in a float, which is how fast it switches over. So what this is doing is it's taking the snapshot that I want, and on whatever audio mixer that is on, it will transition to it at this speed. And then I just have a log here just so I know it's switched. So going back to the inspector, I can start setting in my snapshots the way I want them. So I named them snapshot -0 to -3. So I can just go in and put snapshot -0 to snapshot -3 within this array. And because this only has 4, I'm going to change my size to 4 here. There we go. I can raise and lower my transition speed, but it's fine as is right now. So now, once I hit the play button, and I change this, it's calling that transition to method. Now, you don't specifically have to do it the way that I did it. You could have any number of ways to call the transition to method. All you need to do is call that method. So if you want to set up your music in a different way, you entirely can. You entirely have the option to do so. What's important is this method here. That's what I'm using to switch my music tracks. Just remember, you have to have everything playing and looping all at the same time. You're essentially just muting them all and bringing one back up. And that is how my dynamic music works. Also, I had an X-ray camera. This tutorial is a little less in-depth. It's a bit more straightforward because it's kind of deceptively simple to do, but I'll show you how it works. You can see a guard who just walked past here. And if I walk up to him, it's going to set off the alarm, but whatever, it's fine. Oh, nah, he's really dumb. So essentially the way my X-ray camera is working right now is I'll see like the wire connected to this laser grid. I'll see that guy when he walks through the wall, and I lowered the view distance, so at a certain distance away I won't be able to see him. But when I walk back up, I'll see him again. How I did this is essentially I have a second camera going on. I have an alternate camera. This camera, it's only able to see certain layers, really. So let me explain again what I'm doing here. I make the second camera a child of the first one. It has to be facing the same way, it has to be rotated the same way, scaled the same way. Everything has to be the same, essentially. You can change the far clipping plane if you like, just to lower the X-ray visibility. That's up to you. But essentially everything has to be the same so that they can view the same thing. Here, let me activate the camera so you can see what's going on with it, so you can see this guy here. So there's a couple things you do have to change. One of them is the depth of the camera. Depth is essentially a layer number. So my main camera, it sits on depth 0. It's going to be that's going to be my base view. My alternate camera sits on depth 1, so it'll draw on top of my base camera when I'm doing the draw calls for that. The way this works is to do with layers, which is under the culling mask. Essentially, this camera can only see the enemy layer and the wires layer. That's because my guards sit on the enemy layer and my wires sit on the wires layer. My main camera, it can't see the wires layer because the wires are supposed to be invisible to the main camera. You only see them when you switch to the X-ray camera, but you can see the guards. But again, they show up on the X-ray camera because the X-ray camera is printing over the main camera. Printing or drawing, or whichever terminology fits for you, it's essentially putting it over there. With my guards, I have them on the enemy layer. The layers are important for like things like collisions and stuff like that, but they're also important for being in your culling mask. So it's specifically on this layer because my camera can specifically see that layer. If I go to my wire object, you'll see it specifically on the wires layer. The other thing you have to change with the camera is you have to change clear flags. This is essentially what, as you can see, when you have the skybox there, the camera's going to be drawing in the skybox. When you have a solid color there, the camera's going to be drawing in the solid color as sort of the background when there's sort of like nothing left to draw. What you want, though, is just depth only. That means all it's going to draw is my guard and the wires. And essentially, that is it. What it'll do is it just says, it'll just see those specific layers and draw them on top. So it's as if I'm seeing through the walls. Oh no, you can see me just fine. Oops. Some of you might recognize this level from a different perspective. It's actually the Unity stealth game level. I've used some of the assets from it as well. I just sort of remade it with Pro Builder, just because I wanted to work on a first-person stealth game. So I took that concept and made it to first person. Yeah, here's another guard. You can see him through the wall. Because there was some interest in this, I might develop it further and hopefully work on my talking voice. If people are interested in seeing that or seeing me blog about development of this, sure, cool, I could totally do that. My vision for this was sort of like, it was mostly inspired by like early spy first-person shooters like 007 Agent Under Fire or Nightfire in particular are sort of the inspiration for this when I was making it. I have let it fall to the wayside a bit, I will admit, but if there's some interest in seeing it develop, I mean, I'll for sure continue. I do have other projects I'm working on, you know, like any programmer knows, you have a bunch of things that, oh, you have an idea, let me just work on that forever. Oh no, I have another idea. So, yeah, if people want to see more of this, just let me know in a comment. Let me know if I missed something, or if this doesn't particularly work for you. I was sort of just talking with a small set of notes, so I might have missed something. We'll put a link in the description for the Unity audio snapshot tutorial. That's basically how I learned how to do this. I'll also put a link to the dynamic music asset that has a sample of pretty much something very similar to what I'm doing here. So you can check that out and sort of learn how I learned it. And that's about it. Yeah, just drop a comment if you want to see more, or if you have any other questions for me, and I'll do my best to try and answer them. Thank you for listening to me try to awkwardly explain and pretend like I know what I'm doing. Bye.